Jeremiah Cole's diner was just days away from being taken over. Bills had piled up, neighbors mocked him, and yet he continued to serve meals to anyone who stepped through his door. One evening, he handed his last plate of food to a shivering homeless man, ignoring the whispers that his kindness was the reason he had nothing left. But when officers arrived to shut the diner down, several black SUVs pulled up outside. From one of them stepped out the same man everyone assumed was a nobody, now dressed sharply in a suit that made the entire street fall silent. Before we go any further, we'd appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button. Your support truly helps us share more meaningful and inspiring stories like this one. Now let's begin. Jeremiah Cole's diner looked like a place time had passed by. A faded neon sign flickered weakly over the entrance, barely visible through the light drizzle that had soaked the streets all afternoon. Inside, the smell of fried onions and strong coffee lingered in the air, mixing with the faint dampness that slipped in whenever the door opened. The booths were empty, cracked red vinyl seats, a few crumbs left from the morning rush, and the low hum of an old refrigerator from the back room. Jeremiah stood behind the counter, shoulders slightly hunched, wiping the same spot on the counter with a faded rag. He wasn't cleaning for hygiene anymore. He was cleaning to distract himself from the stack of unpaid bills sitting in his office drawer, untouched for 2 days. People often said he was too kind for his own good, and maybe they were right. Every evening, someone in need wandered in. Sometimes it was an old woman, sometimes children with tired eyes, or men with shoes barely holding together. Jeremiah never sent anyone away. He'd quietly slide a plate across the counter, no questions asked. To him, it wasn't charity. It was simply what he believed was right. "If I can cook, they can eat," he often muttered under his breath. That night, the bell above the door jingled softly. A thin, soaked figure stepped inside, his coat hanging heavily from the rain. The man's beard was patchy, his eyes sunken, and his hands trembled as though the cold had seeped deep into his bones. Jeremiah didn't hesitate. He motioned to the nearest booth. "Sit down, brother." "You're freezing." The man didn't speak, only shuffled forward slowly. He smelled faintly of rain and exhaustion, the kind that settles in after too many nights on the streets. Jeremiah poured him a mug of hot coffee, placed a steaming bowl of chicken soup before him, and even added a couple of painkillers from the jar he kept near the register. From a corner booth, 2 locals whispered just loud enough for Jeremiah to hear. "That's why he's broke," one muttered. "Keeps feeding every drifter that walks in." The other smirked. "He'll lose this place before winter's over." Jeremiah's jaw tightened. He saw their reflection in the chrome of the coffee machine but didn't turn around. There was no point arguing. Let them think he was foolish. Instead, he focused on the man in front of him. The stranger sipped his coffee slowly, his gaze steady, studying Jeremiah's every move. How he tucked the rag into his apron and leaned forward with quiet concern. Jeremiah didn't know it, but that watchful gaze carried far more weight than the gossip at the booth ever would. Outside, the rain tapped harder against the window. Jeremiah rubbed his tired eyes, unaware that this night had quietly begun a chapter that would soon change his life completely. Morning light streamed through the diner's fogged-up windows, streaked with dust that Jeremiah hadn't had time to clean. The tables were mostly empty, with just a few regulars nursing their coffee, their voices carrying louder than they likely knew. "Poor man's too soft," one said, stirring sugar into his cup. "Soft?" the other scoffed. "That's just foolishness. You can't keep giving away food when you can't even pay your rent." They both chuckled, shaking their heads as if Jeremiah's life was nothing more than a live warning against being too kind. Jeremiah acted as though he hadn't heard. Moving with quiet focus behind the counter, he refilled salt shakers and straightened napkin holders. Anything to keep his hands busy. His apron was worn at the edges, and a faint line of sweat crossed his brow despite the morning chill. Still, their words lingered. They pressed heavier on him than the pile of overdue bills waiting in his office drawer. By mid-afternoon, the same stranger returned, wearing the same worn coat, walking with the same slow, careful steps. Jeremiah looked up from the grill and gave a small nod toward a booth without hesitation. The man lowered himself onto the seat slowly, as if his body resisted every small movement. "You again," Jeremiah said quietly, placing a plate of eggs and toast in front of the man. "Eat, no arguments." The man's hand trembled slightly as he lifted the fork. He didn't say much, barely a word, but his eyes stayed fixed on Jeremiah. They followed him as he wiped the counters, greeted the few customers who came in, and glanced at the old clock above the door, as if time was slipping by too fast to catch. Word around the neighborhood spread quickly. Jeremiah's kindness was no longer admired. It was viewed as weakness. Suppliers began turning away from him. One delivery never arrived, and when he called to ask, the response was simple: "Pay what you owe first." That evening, when Jeremiah stepped outside to take out the trash, two neighbors stood near the lamppost. "He's sinking himself," one muttered. "Don't pity him," the other replied. "He chose this path. You can't feed everyone." Jeremiah stopped, the trash bag still in his hand, their words echoing in his mind. For a brief moment he wondered if they were right, but then he thought of the faces he had served, the weary mothers, the hungry kids, the quiet man inside eating like it was his first real meal in days, and the doubt faded away like a passing shadow. Back inside, the diner lights buzzed softly. Jeremiah leaned against the counter, fatigue drawn across his face. Jeremiah didn't notice it, but the stranger's eyes softened, as if he saw something familiar in Jeremiah's quiet exhaustion, something uncommon. The whispers outside continued to grow, yet Jeremiah still showed up every day. And the man kept returning too, silent, steady, always watching. The week dragged on like a rope stretched to its limit. By Tuesday, Jeremiah was preparing meals from whatever remained in his pantry: a half bag of rice, a few onions, and a crate of bruised tomatoes bought cheaply from a vendor who took pity on him. He stirred the pots with a heavy hand, masking the weight in his chest each time he thought of the unpaid bills tucked away in his drawer. By Thursday morning, the mail arrived, a thick envelope stamped in bold red letters. Jeremiah sat at the counter, thumb running along the edge of the seal, his heartbeat quickening. He didn't need to open it to know what it said. When he finally tore it open, the words confirmed his worst fear: foreclosure. If the debt wasn't paid, the diner would be seized within days. That evening, the diner was quieter than ever. Only the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint clink of the stranger's spoon against a chipped bowl broke the silence. This time, Jeremiah sat across from him. Both men looked worn out. The stranger ate slowly, his eyes fixed on Jeremiah. For a moment, Jeremiah thought the man might finally speak, but no words came. Only that same calm, unreadable stare. The next morning, the inevitable arrived. Two uniformed officers entered the diner, papers in hand. Behind them followed a man in a suit holding a clipboard, his eyes scanning the room like a hawk sizing up its target. "Mr. Cole?" one officer asked. Jeremiah nodded, though his throat felt dry and tight. The officers spoke in flat, official tones. The diner was being repossessed. He had until the end of the day to leave. The few customers sitting in the booths watched quietly. Whispers spread quickly. "Told you he wouldn't make it." All that free food finally caught up to him. Jeremiah stood still, gripping the counter until his knuckles turned white. He could hear the murmurs, could feel every stare on his back, but he didn't respond. What was left to say? Then outside, the sound of tires softly screeching against the curb broke the silence. A line of black SUVs pulled up in front of the diner. Their engines idled smoothly, drawing every eye to the window. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Even the officers stiffened, uncertain of what was happening. The door swung open. From the first SUV stepped the same man who had come to Jeremiah's diner night after night. Only now the worn coat was gone. In its place, a sharp, tailored suit caught the morning light. His beard was neatly trimmed, his posture confident, and his presence. Jeremiah's hands fell from the counter, and the rag he always carried slipped quietly to the floor. The man stopped just a step away. He studied Jeremiah's face for a long moment before placing a thick folder on the counter between them. His voice was calm and steady, carrying an authority that immediately quieted the room. "Mr. Cole, these are the property deeds." This building, this diner, it's yours now. Paid in full. Every debt cleared. Gasps spread among the customers. The officers shifted awkwardly, uncertain if they were still required. Jeremiah blinked, trying to process what he'd just heard. He shook his head slightly, as if refusing to believe his own ears. I don't understand, he whispered. The man straightened. You fed me when I had nothing. You gave without question, without judgment. You did it again and again, even when others said it would destroy you. I wanted to know if your kindness was genuine or just routine. So I came here like that. He motioned briefly toward the memory of his ragged disguise. I tested you, and you proved more than I expected. A low murmur spread through the diner. The same neighbors who once mocked Jeremiah now stared in silence, guilt written across their faces. The man continued, I'm investing in this neighborhood. I've been watching your diner longer than you realize. You're more than an owner, Jeremiah. You're the heart of this place, and men like you shouldn't fall. They deserve to rise. He pushed the folder closer. Not only is this diner free and clear, but I want to help you expand. Open new locations. Share what you've built. If you'll allow it, I'll support you all the way. Jeremiah's throat tightened. His trembling hands hovered above the papers. The whispers around the diner had changed. No longer mocking, but filled with respect. Can you believe it? Someone murmured. He was right all along. Kindness really does come back. Tears welled in Jeremiah's eyes, though he tried to blink them away. He placed his palm on the folder, grounding himself in the moment, realizing this was real. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, glinting off the diner's old neon sign. For the first time in months, Jeremiah felt its warmth. His life had changed in ways he never imagined. But one thing remained certain. Tomorrow, when the doors opened, anyone hungry would still find a seat at his table, because in the